Up to now, the stories I've shared with you were born from ancient pacts, from whispered legends and fears hidden in the folds of folklore. These were secrets guarded by communities, by families, by traditions. But there's another kind of secret, a more modern, colder, and perhaps more relentless type, the corporate secret. Large industries, in their incessant search for resources, dig deeper than any explorer, map territories no government knows, and sometimes they find things that weren't on geological maps, anomalies that defy science and common sense. And when that happens, the protocol isn't superstition or prayer. It's a confidentiality agreement, a mass dismissal, a fabricated bankruptcy, silence bought with money and fear. In our last journeys, we dug deep into the earth, into abandoned mines, into sealed basements. We looked for answers in what was buried, hidden under our feet. The horror we found was earthly, geological, carnal. But what if the greatest threat isn't below? What if it has always been above our heads? Since antiquity, humanity has looked to the night sky in search of gods, of answers, of a sense of direction. The stars are our oldest maps, our calendars, our muses. They are a symbol of the eternal, the constant, the predictable. But what happens when the map turns out to be wrong? What happens when the constant begins to behave in an impossible way? And what if some of those distant lights are not just distant suns, but something else? Something that is not just there, but that is also actively looking back at us. Good evening, or good morning. I am the Enigma. The investigation I'm sharing with you today didn't start with an email asking for help with an imminent danger. It started with a request for validation from a man who spent more time looking at the stars than at other human beings. A man who saw something wrong in the sky and who needed to know if he was becoming a genius or a lunatic. This is the story of his discovery and how, together, we may have committed the greatest mistake in human history. And before we point our telescopes at the abyss, if you've also felt small and watched under the starry sky, leave your like to show that we are in this vigil together. And if you're new here and want to join this search for the limits of our reality, subscribe to the Enigma channel and hit the bell. Each of you is another light in the darkness. And believe me, the darkness we're going to explore today is the greatest of all. Let's begin. The contact came from a man named Peter. He introduced himself as a forest fire lookout working for the Forestry Commission. His post, a solitary observation tower on top of one of the highest points of the Peak District National Park in Derbyshire. It's one of the loneliest jobs in the world. He spends 3 to 4 months at a time, alone in a glass and metal cabin, surrounded by a wild nature and a spectacularly clear night sky. Peter was also an amateur astronomer. Solitude was his ally for observing the cosmos. His email was different from the others. It was technical, detailed, almost a scientific report. But beneath the technical terms, I felt a growing anxiety. I'll read an excerpt. Dear the Enigma, I follow your work, and I see that you deal with anomalies seriously. I need a second opinion. 6 months ago, I noticed inconsistencies in the night sky here from the tower. There are 3 points of light fixed that are not listed in any star chart I have. The approximate coordinates are. He lists the coordinates. The problem is not just that they exist. It's their behavior. They blink. Not like normal stars because of the atmosphere. It's a rhythmic, intelligent blink. Sometimes fast, sometimes slow. I recorded the patterns. They seem non-random. But the strangest thing, which made me decide to write, is what I see through my telescope. When I focus on a normal star, I see a point of light, a bright disk. When I focus on one of these 3 points, there is no light. It's the opposite. It's a circle of perfect darkness, a blacker black than the space around it, like a hole. And the blinking is not a light turning on. It's as if Something opens and closes inside the hole, for an instant revealing a complex and faint light behind it. I'm attaching some videos I made with a camera attached to the telescope. The quality is limited, but maybe you'll see what I see. I've been documenting this for months, and the patterns are getting more complex. Tell me this is an unknown atmospheric phenomenon. Please. Regards, Peter. I opened the videos. They were shaky footage of a starry sky. The camera focused on a point, and it blinked. Irregularly, unnaturally. It wasn't scintillation. It was an on-off switch. It had intention, and Peter's description. A hole in the fabric of the sky. That image wouldn't leave my head. I knew that wasn't an atmospheric phenomenon. It was the beginning of yet another mystery. My house in London turned into a mission control center. The first thing I did was to use Stellarium, a planetarium software, to check the coordinates Peter sent me. As he said, in that exact location in the sky, there was nothing. No cataloged star, no nebula, no known geostationary satellite. There were 3 points of nothing on the celestial map. The next step was to analyze the blinking patterns. Peter sent me hours of footage. I converted the light flashes into binary data. On, light was 1, off was 0, and I put this long sequence of ones and zeros into a pattern analysis software that I programmed myself. I expected to find a simple pattern, maybe an interference from a distant pulsar or an error in his equipment. But the result that came back on the screen left me staring at the monitor for almost an hour in absolute silence. It wasn't random. Far from it. The sequence of blinks formed mathematical patterns of an absurd complexity. There were sequences that represented the first 1,000 digits of the number pi. There were others that drew the Fibonacci sequence. And the most impressive of all, there was a long sequence that, when translated from binary to decimal, listed, in order, all the prime numbers up to 7,919. I thought I was dealing with an atmospheric phenomenon or an equipment error. But when the software revealed the mathematical structure behind the blinks, my blood ran cold. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was a message. Or worse, it was the sound of a machine thinking. That wasn't a star. It was a beacon, a probe, a computer, a cosmic-scale artificial intelligence, which for some reason was there, still watching, and thinking in prime numbers. And there were 3 of them in a triangular formation, watching our small corner of the galaxy. Peter's story was no longer about strange lights. It was about first contact. A silent, undetected contact, which perhaps had been happening for centuries. I called Peter. I told him about my discovery. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. And then I heard his voice, trembling for the first time. So ... I'm not crazy, he said. No, I replied. You're not crazy. But maybe we're in a danger we can't even begin to imagine. I needed to go there. I needed to see those eyes with my own eyes. Getting permission to go to Peter's tower was a challenge. I used my journalist credentials to propose a story about the lonely life of fire lookouts. After a lot of bureaucracy, I succeeded. The journey to the Peak District, and then the climb to the tower, was a lesson in humility and isolation. Miles and miles of moorlands, a vast rolling plateau that looks like the top of the world. And at the highest point, the tower, a fragile metal structure, like a matchstick stuck in the immensity. With a small glass cabin at the top. Peter received me with visible relief. He was a thin man, with sunburnt skin, with eyes that seemed permanently focused on something very distant. The cabin was tiny, functional. A bed, a small kitchen, radio equipment, and his sanctuary, a powerful telescope pointed at the sky. Here begins what's truly frightening. On the first night, magic and terror were revealed. The night sky there is not like the cities. It's an overwhelming spectacle. The Milky Way is a dense and brilliant veil. And amidst millions of normal stars, there they were, the 3 points. To the naked eye, they looked like ordinary stars, a little more cold, maybe. "Look," Peter said, pointing the telescope at the first eye. "Look carefully." I leaned over the eyepiece, and my brain refused to process what I saw. It wasn't a disk of light. It was a circle of darkness, a perfect, absolute black that seemed to swallow the stars around it. A hole, a circular vacuum in the fabric of the universe. It was like looking at the absence of God. And then it blinked. It wasn't a light turning on. It was as if a cosmic eyelid opened for a fraction of a second. And in that instant, inside the black hole, I saw not a light, but a geometry. A complex, iridescent structure that my mind couldn't retain. It was a glimpse of a complexity so alien that I felt a physical vertigo, an existential nausea. I recoiled from the telescope, gasping. "What is that?" was all I could say. "I don't know," Peter replied, "but it's watching us." He proved it to me. He pointed a powerful signaling lamp at the eye. The blinks of the entity, which were once slow and rhythmic, became fast, erratic, agitated, like a heart that races with affright. When he turned off the lamp, the blinks returned to their calm rhythm. We repeated the test with the other two eyes. The same reaction. They weren't just there. They were aware of us, of this small planet, of this small metal tower on top of a mountain in Derbyshire. We were a curiosity to them. Ants in a jar. I spent 3 nights in the tower. 3 nights of vigil, documenting, theorizing with Peter. The initial admiration gave way to a growing fear. Peter, on the other hand, was going in the opposite direction. His fear was turning into a feverish obsession. He no longer just wanted to observe. He wanted to communicate. "If they understand mathematics, we can talk to them, Enigma," he said, his eyes shining with a dangerous light. "This is the greatest discovery in history. First contact." "Peter, this is a terrible idea," I argued. "We don't know what they are. We don't know what they want. Silence may be our best defense," but he was adamant. On the 4th night, he put his plan into practice. He connected the signaling lamp to a laptop with a program he wrote himself. "I'm going to send something they can't ignore," he said. "The universal language. Pure mathematics." He pointed the lamp at the middle eye and began to transmit a sequence of simple flashes representing the prime numbers 2, 305, 7, 11. He sent the sequence, and then he turned off the lamp, and we waited, looking at the sky. For a whole minute, nothing. The eye he signaled to stopped blinking. It just remained ... dark. The other two continued in their calm and habitual rhythm. "It didn't work," Peter said, disappointment in his voice. And then it happened. The middle eye blinked back, not with the prime number sequence, but with a single long flash of light. And in the next instant, the sky was transformed. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of points of light that before looked like normal stars began to blink. The entire sky, from horizon to horizon, lit up in a neural network of light and darkness. They were not 3, they were a legion. They were hidden in plain sight, disguised as ordinary stars. And all of them, in a perfect, terrifying, and mathematically precise unison, began to blink back the prime number sequence, but at a speed 1,000 times faster, in superimposed patterns, a cacophony of pure intelligence that exploded in silence over our heads. We had not made first contact. We had pulled the fire alarm of the universe. We had screamed in a forest full of silent predators, announcing our existence, our location, and our pathetic and nascent intelligence. Peter fell to his knees, crying, not from joy, from absolute terror. And I, looking at that sky that now looked like a swarm of eyes staring at us, understood the true meaning of the Fermi paradox. I left the tower the next day. I left Peter behind in the care of the support team that was doing the shift change. He was no longer the same. He barely spoke. He just looked at the sky, even during the day. I'm back in London, but now, when I look at the night sky, I no longer see beauty. I see a facade. I see a crowd watching us in silence. The Fermi paradox asks, where is everyone? And I think I know the answer now. They're all there, and they're all silent. Because the intelligent species that survive in the cosmos are not the ones that scream, but the ones that learn to hide. The great silence of the universe is not a sign of absence. It's a universal safety protocol. It's the #1 rule of cosmic survival. And we, with our radio telescopes, our Voyager probes, our messages to the stars, we are the naive child screaming in the dead of night, without understanding why the adults are all hidden and silent. And that's the question I leave for you. What is more terrifying? The possibility that we are alone in the universe, or the certainty that we are not, and that we have just announced our presence to the neighbors that everyone else is afraid to wake up? Is our search for contact the next step in our evolution, or the first step of our extinction? Leave your reflections in the comments. Today, more than ever, I need to know that I'm not the only one thinking about this. If this story changed the way you look at the stars, subscribe to the Enigma channel and hit the bell. That way, you join us in this attempt to understand the rules of this immense and perhaps dangerous universe. I still don't know what the next case will be. The truth is, after this, Earth's problems seem so small, but maybe that's exactly what I need to look at again. Maybe the monsters we can understand are a refuge. Thank you for your company in this vigil. And the next time you look at the sky, don't wave. Just observe in silence. Until next time.